Hi everybody, it's the weekend and it's time to do a video. Get ready. Right. Well, happy weekend to you. Um, did you know that there are three ways that we can offend God's grace? Uh, Paul talked about them, and there's one that's really commonly known, but it's totally understood backwards. I'm going to talk to you about the first way you can offend God's grace, and that is through falling from grace. And he talked about that in chapter 5 of Galatians. Now, conventional wisdom thinks that if you have backslidden, you've started drinking and carousing or whatever you're doing, and or you're just not going to church, that you've fallen from grace. That's actually the opposite of falling from grace. Let me tell you what falling from grace is. It's found in Galatians chapter 5, and Paul is saying here, "For I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the whole law. Christ has become of no effect to you. Whosoever of you who are justified by the law, ye are fallen from grace." What Paul is saying there is he was first of all complaining because the Galatians, after he had left them, James sent some men to them and started making them obey the law again and get circumcised. And Paul was very upset with that. And because he's saying right there, even though it was just one law, even if you try to obey one law, then you are fallen from grace. Um, in this case, it was circumcision, but it could be anything. You could try to eat kosher, observe the Sabbath, uh, you know, the golden rule, and it that is fallen from grace. You have fallen from your understanding of grace, and that is an offense to the grace of God. Fortunately, though, when anyone offends God's grace, there's just more grace for them. It, it that's the good thing about God's grace. Let's go to the second one. The second one in the Hebrews is talking about doing what's called despite to the Spirit of grace, and that is an old English terminology, but basically here is in chapter 10. He was talking about how there is no more sacrifice because once the sacrifice of Christ was completed, sin was taken away forever by that sacrifice. And basically, if anyone believes that they still need a sacrifice because they believe they have still sinned, if anybody even asks for forgiveness of their sin, that means that they are doing despite to the Spirit of grace, because through grace and through the cross, by grace, sin was taken away. So even if you ask for unforgiveness or ask for forgiveness for anything, you are doing despite to, or in modern English that means to insult. You're insulting the Spirit of grace. So that would be the second one, and the third one talks about failing of the grace of God, and it's in chapter 12 of Hebrews, verse 15. It says, "Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled." Now, why did he say that? He was leading up to that statement when he was talking about how under the old covenant, God chastened and scourged and punished the Jews from time to time. And however, gospel of grace is also part of the gospel of peace, and the covenant of peace that was prophesied in Isaiah, which came through the cross. And God promised that he would never be angry anymore. He would not punish anybody anymore after that day. And so for anyone who thinks they are currently going through a period of chastisement in their life, or they think that God's going to punish them for something, they have failed of the grace of God. They have failed of their understanding of grace. They have failed of grace. Luckily, even though that's an offense to grace, again, there's just more grace. So that's the wonderful thing about grace. So if you want to get a detailed education on the offenses to God's grace, go down to the description on the YouTube page where this YouTube video is playing. There's a link there to download the series Don't Offend the Grace of God by Mike Williams. Anyway, I'm sure that's revolutionary to somebody watching, so continue to have a revolutionary week. Carry on.